Okay, this page is Catherine the Great Reincarnated. And the emphasis on this page is on my royal ancestry and the fascinating way that I came into existence. As I stated in my previous video, I am literally the reincarnation of King David and Catherine the Great. And my ancestors were very noble people. They were not power hungry. But the question you might ask is, how in the world did I get these genes when I'm not directly descended from Catherine the Great? And the answer is that I came from the same Germanic gene pool that she came from. I'm actually directly descended from Vladimir the Great of Russia, who lived around 1000 AD. And his children came either because of one of his many wives or maybe through Vladimir the Great himself, came from the same Germanic gene pool that would produce Catherine the Great in Germany or Prussia. Not Germany. Oh yeah, she's from Germany, and then she went. Oh, then she ended up living in Russia and becoming the Russian Empress. But that's because she married Peter the Great, and he turned out to be a flop of a husband, and he ended up dying, and then she became empress in his place as his wife. Anyways, that's a different story. But the thing is, how did I end up with the genes of Catherine the Great? Well, Vladimir the Great's children came into, he had like hundreds of wives, and he had hundreds of children. And what happened was Boris and Gleb were, after Vladimir the Great passed on, the next in line for the throne was Boris and Gleb. But they didn't want the throne. They were very devoutly religious men, and they decided to sacrifice the throne to be true to their religious convictions. But unfortunately, one of their half-brothers decided that he wanted the throne, and he decided the only way he could ensure that his reign would be secure was he needed to murder Boris and Gleb. So he sent mercenaries out to murder Boris and Gleb, and they died as martyrs for their faith rather than fight him and cause a civil war in Russia. And so they wouldn't fight back. Even when his mercenaries came to kill him, they just sacrificed themselves for their God. And Boris and Gleb are now saints in the Russian Orthodox Church for this reason. But the rest of his many children realized that if they wanted to stay alive with this tyrant now in charge of Russia, that they needed to run away. So they emigrated. They left on horseback and traveled miles and miles into Siberia. They just kept going and going, not knowing what lay beyond, but knowing that they had to get away from Russia to stay alive. So the rest of his children who didn't want the throne in Russia, didn't want to cause a civil war in Russia, they were also devoutly religious like Boris and Gleb, but they decided that they owed it to their children and their grandchildren to leave Russia, and they went across Siberia, and they ended up in the Japans. And when they came, I think they probably came through Hokkaido Island because they were coming from the north. And when they came into Japan, the Japanese people that they ran into were the Amishi. And the Amishi decided that they would adopt them as their own, but they said, we can't let the Japanese people here know that you are royalty from another country, or they'll kill you here too. So they played like they were ordinary people, and they married into the Amishi. But the Amishi ruled northern Japan at that time through the Abe clan. And they decided to take advantage of this new royal blood that got infused into their bloodlines, and they made rulers out of them. And through a series of steps, eventually these rulers became the Oshu Fujiwara family. What's really interesting about the Oshu Fujiwara family is the last ruler, Yasuhira, sacrificed his throne to be true to his religious convictions. So he took after his grandparents, Boris and or his relatives, where he came from, Boris and Gleb. So you can see people do tend to be like their genes. And Yasuhira was a devout Buddhist, so he was devout, and he refused. He didn't believe in war, so he didn't build up his military. And Yoritomo, who was an ambitious ruler who wanted to become shogun, emperor of Japan, which he did succeed in doing because he easily defeated Yasuhide because Yasuhide didn't believe in war, and he just came in there and attacked him. He was evil. He had ambition. See, so my ancestors are like that. And I actually kind of take after them because when I had an opportunity to have power, let's say, as the famous wife of Brent Spiner back in the early 1990s, I turned him down. So I kind of take after my ancestors. I turned down the chance to have power or prestige to be true to my religion. And I felt like it would be committing adultery for me to go to Brent, even though I wanted him. So I sacrificed something that I really wanted. I didn't want the fame, but I did want to be Brent Spiner's wife, but I sacrificed that. So the Lord created me to be, he deliberately chose those genes, apparently because he liked the kind of a person those genes would produce. Somebody who doesn't lust for power, but who believes in being true to their faith. And that's the kind of person I am. I'm just like Boris and Gleb. I'm just like Yasuhide. But I also have King David in me. So that kind of balances me out and keeps me from being too naive about politics. And the King David part of me believes in using war if necessary to secure my kingdom. So, and Catherine the Great wasn't too dumb either. So she didn't like war, but she knew if she needed to use war, she would. So what the Lord did was he took the best parts of the Catherine the Great and the King David genetic profile, and he put it in me. And so here I am. You might say it's a fluke, but that's, I came about for that reason. Anyways, this whole page is devoted to this. And the place in Japan where the Oshu Fujiwara family reigned is called Hiraizumi, and I have a lot of videos about Hiraizumi. And ironically, I also on this page I cover some other items. Like I have the page ends where the Brent Spiner clone forced the real Brent Spiner to be raped by Laurie McBride right in the middle of the Quebec trial. And I have links down at the bottom of my page. Also, during the Quebec trial, Laurie McBride sent me in my email pictures of her making love to the Brent Spiner clone. And that's how I figured out that Brent had a clone, because I thought, how did she get those pictures? So I figured out he had a clone. And after the trial was over, I wrote Brent an email and said, hey, you've got a clone. And that's how your clone was able to switch out with you during the trial, forcing you to make love to Laurie McBride right in the middle of the trial. And Laurie McBride sent me pictures of the Brent Spiner clone making love to her. I saw his long penis and everything, though out of respect for Brent, even though the clone is not Brent, but still, I'm not going to post that. I've edited the pictures so you can't see them. But what was really ironic was it was an uncircumcised penis, and Brent is Jewish. Of course, nowadays, Laurie might have fixed all that. Brent has had several clones. That clone got executed, and several other clones got executed. And I don't know how many Brent Spiner clones there are left. Laurie, I think, has several of them in operation at the same time. She uses one to write on Brent Spiner's Twitter. He's hijacked Brent's Twitter. And then others go to the Star Trek conventions, and then I think they get killed off when they don't need him anymore. Laurie has absolutely no respect for human life. She will kill herself and replace herself with a clone, or kill a Brent Spiner clone, replace them with a clone in order to accomplish her objectives. And she has no regard for human life. To her, murder's like a drop in the hat. She doesn't care. But she makes sure to frame all of her murders on us, on me and my men, or the people who support me, like Donald Trump or, somebody else, to make it look like they did it and to make it seem like such a horrible thing. Actually, she's not horrified by it at all, but she has to be real melodramatic about it and pretend like she cares so she can get all those Democratic people that are stupid and don't know what's going on to follow her. Don't get so married to your ideology that you forget about what's really happening. Don't become a brainwashed clone, okay? Think for yourself, be autonomous, If I was a Democrat, I would probably leave the party right now. I'd be so upset with the direction that party's going. Lauren McBride has hijacked the Democratic Party, and you'll be able to see that when you go through my website. So that's in there. I also show some pictures of uh, the coloring and the difference between Larissa Putin, who was the woman that Vladimir married in 1983, versus Ludmila Putin, who was the clone of Larissa. Larissa died in 2000 from a systemic yeast infection, which is what I was infected with, though I got the cure on Seroquel. They didn't know about Seroquel being the cure to yeast in 1999 or 2000 when she died. But when Vladimir fell in love with me, the Jesuits wasted no time to hit a Larissa clone on him. But I think they were in a hurry, so they goofed when they made her and they got her coloring wrong. She doesn't have Larissa's coloring. Larissa was a summer and Ludmila was a autumn. And I point that out on this web page. Also, Sarah Avery, the Jesuits create some monstrous clones. They created some clones that were obese women who weighed at least 400 pounds. Sarah Avery actually went up to about 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. She weighs so much now that through her vagina she could create a black hole. So my men and Zach Knight, who's now come to our side, we've got her like set up in an area where we can make sure she doesn't get so overweight that she becomes in danger of becoming a black hole. She is so big, you would need Google Earth to view her now. That's how big she is. And when she has to poop, she has to sit on top of a volcano. She's too big for it. She's too big for any house or toilet. I mean, that's how she goes to the bathroom. So these are the Jesuit creations that they get with their UFO technology. And I expose all that stuff here on this page. You get to see the pictures at the bottom that Lori McBride sent me of her and the Brent Spiner clone making love, which actually she didn't expect me. She thought that I thought back in 2011 that Jesuits wouldn't make clones of Jewish people, but I learned that I was wrong, and I figured that out and told Brent about it. What's really funny is when Brent found out that he had a clone, then the clone went public. He said, oh, they know about us now, so we might as well go public and just impersonate Brent, make us think that we are Brent. And Brent and the clone actually had the clone actually tried to kill Brent in September 2011. And Hugh Jackman saved his life. But this didn't happen before the clone shut down Brent's YouTube channel that he made for me. The clone just loves to claim that the real Brent Spiner is impersonating him and to shut down all of his online presence. And he just recently shut down the real Brent Spiner's Twitter, where Brent set up a Twitter for Brent Spiner MD, and the clone shut that down. Well, one of the many clones, you know. So I'm just exposing these clones. They need to be exposed, and the horrendous UFO technology that the Jesuits use, like how they create Sarah Avery monsters and stuff. Some of the stuff they create in their cloning labs is so satanic, you can tell. So anyways, this page, I also show you how they grow these clones. Like I have pictures of Brianna Jenkins Schuler. She came into existence in November 2011, but within 2 months, they made her a 20-something-year-old lady. She's very good looking. She's a beautiful girl. But I have evidence of accelerated growth hormones and how they work in Jesuit creations. They use them in their clones, like the Brent Spiner clone is artificially aged using accelerated growth hormones. He might only be 2 months old, but using accelerated growth hormones, they can make him look like he's 70 or whatever age they want. And they use accelerated growth hormones on a lot of their agents, like Camilla Alves. Laura Reed's had hundreds of clones, and God knows which version of Laura Reed we're dealing with right now. We've been sending our mini Serakakis on her to try to cage her and send her out into Satan's ocean, but she just allows herself to die and then transfers her powers and her memories to another Lori McBride clone, and poof, she's back in existence again. So anyways, check out and I also have stuff in here about Matthew McConaughey being the star of the Forbidden Silver Skies movie based on my book, which I believe actually won an Oscar. He won an Oscar for Best Actor. That was his first Oscar, by the way. So check out this page. All that stuff is there. And I also have a link underneath this page to show you how to find all the GabrielleChana.com pages that are now at GabrielleChana.blog.